So on today's video I thought I'd talk to you about a band from Cleveland, Ohio who became absolutely synonymous with Boss Tuneage in those Ink Splat Logo years, and of course that band is The Unknown.
Now it's time for you to let me in on things and let me know what's going on. I know you feel like it's the end of the world and all is lost and gone for now. Listen to me, I sense that bottom is I can't see. You look like you're losing. I am the kid in me. Your mind is so full. Listen to me, get back to reality.
So when did I first become aware of The Unknown? I think it was basically, they appeared on Dag Nasty tribute CD, Her Head's on Fire, which I organised the pressing for Stefan in Belgium. And I think either on his recommendation possibly, and so I think Ken got in touch with me and sent me a letter, and in it was a copy of Rocket Pop, which the band had released on their own Jiffy Pop label. And I think when I received this was in the time when I was really buoyant about relaunching as Out of Order, and I think that I said, look, I can take some copies of this to sell. You know, I thought this was before like the whole idea that we were going to work with Snuffy Smile sort of fizzled out, and before the Fettered CD, I think, had actually, the sales from that had come in. So Ken did, and I think a couple of weeks later I got sort of like 50 copies of Rocket Pop, which I was going to sticker and release. So we're talking sort of probably late 95, early 96 here. But by the time that they actually turned up with me, it was becoming pretty darn clear that I wasn't going to be able to continue the label. So I held on to them, moved to London, held on to them a little bit more, kept thinking I really should contact Ken about these CDs. Moved to a flat in London, and yeah, they just sat there, I'm afraid, for about 2-3 years. So when things started to evolve, that meant I was going to be looking at restarting Boss Tuneage again, they were the first people outside of Annalise that I actually contacted. So I included the copies of Rocket Pop on a list of stuff that I had available to Kaza and over at Boss Tuneage Japan. And he pretty much took all those copies and then started asking about their other releases. Now I'd actually sold the CDs that Ken had sent me sort of 4 years earlier even at that point. I thought, now I can get back in touch with him and say, here's the money for those CDs. Could I have a bunch of all your other releases as well? Which, to give him his due, Ken actually did send over, and you know, if I had been in his position, I probably wouldn't have done, because it's like, who's this guy that's taken 4 years to buy this stuff? But also I was really keen that I wanted to do another one-sided 7-inch single, and when I heard the Still Unknown, which was their latest CD at that time, I really liked the first track, Puzzles, and I'd always really liked Never Be the Same off Rocket Pop. So ideas were put in place to do a Unknown one-sided 7-inch single. So the Unknown Puzzle 7-inch came out in July 1999.
A million people hiding away, lost in the crowds amidst obscurity. I wish I could help you find your way, and maybe someday soon I'll see you on the moon, and maybe someday above I'll catch up to you on Mars. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Why won't you tell me, where are you?
And I know that over the next few months we got more copies of Rocket Pop. We also got copies of Still Unknown and Stick at That. We also got copies of their first album, Change, and actually I think we ended up having to repress Change as well, so that might have been pressed, I think, around the same time as what would become the first release that Boss Tuneage sort of did properly with The Unknown, which was the Pop Art CD in the year 2000. So I think it was around in sort of January 2000 we were talking, myself and Ken, about doing an Unknown CD on Boss Tuneage. which obviously became pop art. But I think I mentioned about, well, perhaps you could come over and tour as well. And by this point, Fracture was obviously a really big influence and focal point for the whole things that I was doing on Boss Tuneage. And there was a message board called the Fracture Forum, and this was where everyone was finding out about gigs, keeping in touch, knowing what was happening. So I think I put a post out there, to see if anyone would be interested in putting a gig on by The Unknown. But by this time as well, I was speaking a lot to Russell from Pig Dog, obviously about his band Scarpa as well. And Russell knew The Unknown as well, because he'd done a 7-inch by a band called Dreyfus, that featured Pete Woodward, who were, label mates and buddies of The Unknown. And Pete would obviously be a member of The Unknown at a much later date. So I think the plan was put together that if we're going to do the Scarpa album, would you like to be the support band for The Unknown if we do, and we'd do an Unknown Scarpa UK tour. So the plan was put together in place to put, I think it was about 10 or 12 days in July 2000. I met the band in London. Obviously I was based in London, so they flew into Heathrow. I picked them up in a white van. And then we drove up to Hull for the first show. We also picked up Monk Dave, who was the other editor of Fracture. And that's the first time I actually met Dave, because he was going to come around, because we were also going to distribute the latest issue of Fracture around the country when we were on tour. And something that was happening sort of behind the scenes whilst we were getting ready and preparing this pop art record was that I was obviously working at making records, which by that point had actually been taken over by another company. It was called Doc Data, and there were sort of rumours circulating that Doc Data had also bought out another CD plant based in Telford called Ablex. And so as the date of the tour progressed, it pretty much looked like I could potentially be out of a job by the time I come back from tour. So I think I was really determined that this UK tour, I was just going to enjoy it and, make the most of it, because, I didn't really know what I was going to be coming back to after it. But I remember when I got the master through for pop art, and it was just like, whoa, this is it. This was everything that sort of like the band had potential to do, and I think they'd nailed it. And I just remember thinking, wow, this is brilliant. And really excited. Thought, we're pressing this. I'm bringing a band from overseas on tour. I'm going to drive them round, and let's see what happens. I remember also being really concerned, because I thought, they're going to need work permits. How do I get work permits? So I actually contacted Ian Armstrong, because obviously he was doing hidden talent booking by this point. So he sort of gave me all the ins and outs of where you went for a work permit and how you had to get them and all that, because the last thing I wanted was the band to fly in and then be turned away again. And by this point with Boss Tuneage, I'd sort of instigated one thing that I'd really wanted to do, which was a mail out. So anyone who was buying sort of mail order from me or got in touch with us would be added to our mailing list. And then the idea was I did this sort of like little fanzine mail order catalogue every sort of few months. It would later evolve to having a free CD with it when you went out. So basically we had a way to actually announce the tour in that, and we got it out to quite a few people around the country so that they kind of knew that this tour was even happening. And I also now had quite a big sort of mail order and distro, because I'd been doing a lot of trading of all the old stock and some of the new stuff as well. So the idea was, well, I'll bring that on tour with me, and we can sell, and that will help us for petrol money and getting round on this tour, and hopefully sort of cover the costs of it. We also needed to get some tour t-shirts done. I remember Andy from Ball Cactus had started printing t-shirts at that point, so he printed the Unknown Tour 2000 t-shirts from us, so we picked those up from Hull, I believe. We got him to send them to Russell, so that they were kind of there waiting for the band when we first got up to Hull and met Russell and the rest of Scarpa. So I guess looking back at it now, it was a bit of a risk really, because the difference had been, obviously I'd booked tours for UK bands who I knew the people, etc. In the past, but I hadn't booked a tour for 7-8 years probably at that point. And also I'd never actually met The Unknown, but I'd also never met Monk Dave, and I'd never met Scarpa in person. So I was just about to embark for a fortnight with people, for all I know, could have been complete dicks. Luckily, And I say really, luckily they weren't. Everyone just got on really well, and to be honest, I made friends for life on that tour, and it's a really, really happy memory of mine. So the unknown at this time was Ken on vocals, Brian P. McCafferty on bass, and the Roscoe brothers, Wayne on drums and Chris on guitar, and it was just real fun. I just have so many wonderful, happy memories of that whole tour. I'm not going to go into details here now, but if you wanted to find out about what happened on that tour, the Unknown website I think is still live, and you can the tour diary is actually archived on there, which helped jog my memory on a lot of things I'd forgotten when I was doing this video. So yeah, it was brilliant. You know, we got around the country, but I think the gigs pretty much on the whole were really well, you know, attended. I think there was a couple of shows where it was, you know, not that great. Didn't really have that many days off. Yeah, and did a lot of driving, but they were really cool because I remember they always made sure, because I was driving them around, that I'd get like the comfiest bed wherever we were crashing that night, which helped, you know, doing it. But yeah, it was just a constant drive to the venue, set the merch table up, and watch the bands, meet lots of people. It really reconnected me into people who I sort of knew virtually at this point, because a lot of things were happening on email, and but getting out there and around was great. You know, and Julie, bless her, you know, she went without a holiday that year. She went without a holiday for quite a few years over that period. You know, and sort of weird because I was just using my holiday allocation up from work to go on tours with bands, basically. So we'd got Pop Art back, I think, about a week or 2 weeks before the tour started, so we started selling it on the tour. I sent all the stock over to Japan and Germany and places like that. We started to get some really good feedback and great reviews on it, I seem to remember at the time. The funniest thing was, about a day after the tour finished, that they sort of called me, the Unknown, or sent me an email saying, "You're not going to believe this. We were listening to Pop Art on the flight home. We think there might be a little glitch on the CD." And lo and behold, probably unless you're in the band and you pointed it out, you wouldn't kind of know that this glitch happened. But there is a slight glitch on one track, and so I remember I sort of took it up with the CD plant when I got back. And they agreed there'd been a slight error on the pressing of it, so they actually repressed them for free, because obviously everything had gone out now. So we did have this thing, well, if anyone notices, you know, I'll send them a replacement copy, but no one ever did notice. It's the tiniest thing, and yeah, so in theory what happened was we got the repressing for free because of it, which really helped as well. And as far as my own personal situation, obviously, you know, it looked like the CD plant in London was going to be closed down, and the option was basically, if you want to continue working with us, you're going to have to relocate to Telford. And no disrespect to the people of Telford, but at that time I didn't want to leave London. Julie was in a really good job. We were happy with where we were living, and so yeah, so it was looking a bit perilous. But I remember I was driving back from Leven in Fife, which was sort of like the Scottish date that the Unknown did just on their own. Scarpa didn't actually come up to that one, and I got a call from Key Production, who were obviously one of my biggest customers at the time. Lisa at Key Production called me, and I'd obviously sort of started to mention to one or two of my customers, well, keep your ear out, because I think things here aren't going too well. And it just so happened that it was the first person ever who'd left Key Production at that time, had just handed their notice in. So literally I got sort of saying, well, you know, come and have a word with Karen when you're back in, you know, next week and stuff. Karen, who was the boss of Key. And I remember I went back into Doc Data after the tour. Had finished first day back, and James, who was my sort of like immediate manager, said to me, "Look, Key are really unhappy. Lots of their jobs are running late. You'll need to go up to Camden and try and appease them." So off I went across London, because obviously we were based in Battersea, and literally Karen just from her office went like that, and then asked me and said, "I understand you might want a job. Would you like a job?" And I said yes. Yeah, so I started at Key in August 2000. I'm still working for them as a consultant these days, but still working for them today. So I think pretty soon after Pop Art came out, Ken had the idea of getting a promo video together. I don't think it's been that widely seen, so I've managed to track, courtesy of Ken, a copy of it down. So let's have a watch of it now.
disappear, disappear. For now just let me disappear, disappear. I promise I'll come back to here. Sometimes I really think I need to clear my head and bring back a smile. Oh, and sometimes I really think I need to peer into the past once again. I need to escape, I need to break these chains. I need to break the chains that bind me to every day. Help me out and let me see the way it's supposed to be. For now just let me disappear, disappear. For now just let me disappear, disappear. I promise I'll come back to here. Disappear, disappear. For now just let me disappear, disappear. I promise I'll come back to here. I'll come back to here. I'll come back to here. Well, I'll come back to here.
And the move to Key was a really, really important thing, because obviously I said to Karen, look, I'm doing this record label as well, and said, well, that's fine, we can press your stuff for us, you know. So when I moved to Key, I actually managed to get a credit account with Key, because obviously they knew, well, if I don't pay my bills, they can just dock it out my salary, I guess. But that really, really is what really kicked, you know, Boss Tuneage onto the next level, was having a credit account. Because it meant I didn't have to wait for the money to physically be in my account to press the records for the very first time ever. And because I could sort of manage it, knowing what I was going to release when, send them out to Kazaa, etc., and know I was then going to get the money back from Kazaa to pay the bills when I had to pay the bills, the whole thing snowballed. So a lot of the stuff I wanted to do, I could now do. And because of that, Key wasn't obviously just working with one CD plant, it was working with a variety of CD plants and printers all around the country and further afield. So, you know, I knew what was the sort of the cheapest option to get this bit of the components, you know, where was the cheapest place to get the CDs pressed, where was the cheapest place to get the print pressed, etc., etc. And so I came up soon afterwards with this idea of doing like mini CDs that were in printed wallets with a booklet. And the reason I went for that is because it was a cheaper way of making the CD, so I could keep the price down, because I was still very keen on my, you know, pay no more than ethos, that I wanted to do things cheap and cheerful, you know, make them more accessible to more people. But also the benefit of doing CDs in a wallet was that obviously the shipping costs to Japan were a lot less. It meant that Kazaa didn't necessarily have to assemble them. So it all just, you know, sort of helped with the model of what I was trying to do. So that's why the next release on the Unknown on Boss Tuneage was The Real Thing, which was like a mini CD, and they actually covered Scarpa's song Groupthink on that mini CD as well. And yeah, I think, you know, we at least did 1,000, 1,500 possibly of those as well. So as we got into sort of like 2002, thoughts turned to doing another album following the success of Pop Art. And I remember Ken, I think, got in touch with me because Chris was relocating to Japan. He was fluent in Japanese and was heading out to Japan. So I think they were keen to actually get the album recorded before Chris left. So I think they went in and recorded Radio Lied to Me very early on, tail end of 2002, early 2003.
Radio,
plans were put in place, we'll come over and tour again. And this is at the point, I think, when Pete Woodward joined the band. So he would be the new guitarist, which was a perfect fit because obviously, you know, he was another great guy as well, and also been friends with the bands for years. But by 2003, I couldn't be involved on going on tour with them. Remember, I was doing lots of other bands, and I only had a limited amount of holiday allocation. There's no way I could go on tour with every single band that I was kind of dealing with at the time. By this point, we'd hooked up with Martine and Paolo, who were doing Self-Made Maniac in Belgium, who basically drove and tour managed the bands around and would help with booking the European legs of the shows. I helped with the UK legs, and we sort of got together almost like a 3-week European tour where they start off in Europe, come over to the UK in the middle, and then go back to Europe and fly back out again. And that was the first point when they played with K-Line, who become firm friends with as well on that tour. I know they were blown away with K-Line when they saw them play live. But the thing I must really point out with The Unknown is that, you know, everyone loved it when they came over to the UK because they made friends wherever they went. And just, I think they had the right attitude. And yeah, it was just another wonderful tour, I seem to remember. I didn't get to see that many of the shows, but I did see, there was an amazing show actually on that tour in London. At Camden Dingwalls of all places, and I think we'd had like a gig cancelled, and Zach, who was the singer in K-Line, was running this skateboard promotions company sort of thing called Crossfire at that time, and doing skateboard nights. The Iraq War had broken out, I think a couple of days before you know, the band came over, so an American band that had been scheduled to play this Dingwall show pulled out. And Warner Brothers were really, really keen to sort of get another band. So they flew in this band called Hot Action Cop. And they sort of basically for 2 press days and a free gig. And they said, you know, told Zach to sort of put this gig on. They would pay for all the support bands. They pay for everything. They just wanted to get some press for this band. So it was this really bizarre free gig, basically courtesy of Warner Brothers. And we had 3 Boss Tuneage bands play. So it was Blocko, K-Line, Hot Action Cop, and The Unknown, all as a free gig in London. And I remember there were a couple of, you know, there were a fair few hundred people at this gig. I think everyone and their dog found out there's going to be this free gig in Camden, come along. And I remember that sort of like Blocko, K-Line and The Unknown just ripped the place apart. Hot Action Cop were the sort of like the payoff, because people, and I just remember there was this mass exodus from the venue when they played. Or they were getting loads of jeers and lots of people holding up banners saying go home and all this sort of stuff. And it was a really sort of surreal night, but the bands got paid brilliantly and it really helped fund the whole UK leg of that Unknown tour. So I'm forever grateful to Zach for organising that, because it really helped the band out. And the funniest thing is the gig was actually reviewed in Kerrang, the next week's issue of Kerrang and stuff. They got a great big sort of feature, and they kind of couldn't really say just like how bad Hot Action Cop had gone down, but reading between the lines you could tell that it had been kind of an unusual night. But, you know, there were great gigs all along that tour. I remember that, you know, they got up to Glasgow and played with Barefoot up there, who obviously were on the label at that time. They also used to play the Guildford Youth Centre, and those gigs were just hilarious and great fun. And so Matt and Tom Ellis put those gigs on, and they were just, you know, big Unknown fans at the time, and it was just a lot of fun. Although I do have to say, you know, you have to bear in mind I was about 31, 32 at this point. And the Guildford sort of standard audience were all sort of 17, 18, 19, you know, it was a young audience. And I did feel, standing at the back, I almost felt like the parents waiting for the gig to end sometimes. So I started to feel a bit old at that point. But obviously by 2004, when they came back the second time and did a European tour, that's when the label was kind of sort of hitting rocky waters, and I'll go more into that as to what was going on, and you know, and you know, it meant that by the end of 2004, sort of like I had to take the decision to stop the label and put the label into sort of like a hiatus for a while. I did intend to sort of restart if I could at that point, and obviously The Unknown were one of the bands. You know, when I restarted, I wanted to work with a lot less bands. We built up lots of debt, and you know, I had to kind of streamline everything into what made sense to do. But The Unknown was a no-brainer that, you know, I'd hopefully continue working with them. So the hiatus after the Ink Splat Logo years, I think a lot of people don't even realise that I went on hiatus. You know, there was about I think it was a 6 to 9 month period where I just had to reassess everything, and then redecided, and that's when I sort of relaunched again in 2005. And The Unknown went in and did their final album to date, which was called Unpopular, which we released in 2006.
But I know that all we went through couldn't stop me from bidding adieu, 'cause I knew it was wrong. Like a faded photograph, damaged by the sun. You're pretty identical, but you're so pretty, much the same. Pretty identical.
And I think pretty much soon after that they stopped playing gigs. They've never split up. It's just that they kind of went into hibernation. I think Wayne went off for college to a different city from what I can remember, and it all just sort of like, you know, got put on hold. You know, I don't know whether, you know, it seemed to just reach a natural conclusion at that point. But never say never. I mean, since then, Brian has been in tons of bands over the years. I mean, he'd been in the Parasites before The Unknown as well, and Beatnik Termites and people like that. And Pete and Ken went on and did Restless Habs, which obviously they were on the 3rd Instant Singles collection. So we've kept in touch over the years, albeit sporadically with, you know, life getting in the way. There have been a couple of Unknown shows in sort of like in Cleveland over the years. I think there was one in 2013 and one in 2017. So never say never, but, you know, we're all a bit older now. It's kind of really scary to think that first UK tour was 22 years ago this year. It's you know, it's a lifetime away, but it's memories that live long in my heart, and it was just a wonderful time. I met friends for life, and thank God that, you know, I did pay Ken, and we did end up doing stuff with The Unknown. That's it for this video. See you on the next one.